Okay, copper is another micro trace element and it's an important mineral and it may be quite complicated. It's really important to understand and go back over here every time that we can get copper deficiencies, which are true deficiencies, or lockup of copper, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which is often a more common deficiency. Optimum levels of copper, we'll talk about why that's important, but toxicity, where we oversupply copper in a way of supplementing, is a challenge as well. So copper needs to be managed very carefully, and it's probably one of the more complex minerals. We're still only learning about some of the processes that are there. So I suppose if you look at copper deficiency, what are the symptoms of it? In young animals, it's been associated with 𝗘𝗀𝗽𝗏. They digest copper through their intestines because they don't have a rumen. It's been linked in with older ruminants to immunity issues. It can be linked to fertility, and typically we talk about hair and dull hair coat because it's involved in keratinization, and that can be an issue. It's also involved in lipids and glucose. So copper is involved in a lot of processes in the body. So true copper deficiency, with low levels of copper going in the diet, we can see that occasionally. But why copper is a little bit more complicated is copper in the rumen can form these combinations with the like of molybdenum and sulfur and iron, and some of these are still not truly understood. But these act either the rumen locking it up in the rumen, or when they get into the bloodstream, these thiomolybdates, which can actually lock up copper, this freely available copper. So it's really, when we see high sulfurs, particularly in Ireland, we see a lot of high molybdenum soils and where you've iron, and these complexes lock up copper, and that makes copper supplementation more difficult. And again, it's back to knowing what are the interactions, what's the measurement of some of these other external minerals, that these trace elements like iron, molybdenum and sulfur, which is a macro mineral, are key to making your copper decisions for your farm, because it does play a role in immunity and disease and health in animals. So the lockup is complex, and that's why copper supplementation, we need to know a lot of times where we have toxicity issues, particularly, is we have a number of sources of copper going into animals, be it through feed, forages, minerals. We need to know to balance that off, and we also need to know what are these elements, what role are they playing in it. So toxicity can be an issue where we try and oversupply copper. How do we measure copper in our ruminants? You know, people talk about bloods. They're not very accurate because most of the storage of copper reserves, and a bit like cobalt, are in the liver. So liver sampling is actually your truest way of getting copper readings for an animal. And liver biopsy in live animals, although a difficult procedure, can be very accurate. Something that some people will do is actually go to the factory where culled animals are and take some liver samples to get an idea of where the herd is. And again, with all these measurements, you know, if you're putting this with forages, if you're putting it with, you know, what's going in your cereals or concentrates, if you know what's going in your grasses, you can make better decisions around copper, because it's an important mineral, but it's complicated to get it right. And it's key to understanding that it's not just copper often we talk about, it's these agents, since that lockup is a very important process, and that's why we must understand that copper requires a bit of thinking when we start supplementing.